one. And so anyone, whether you have kids or not, or are looking forward to being a mother someday, if you are over 18 and a woman, you are invited to take one of those out there this morning. And maybe you could give it to your mom if you forgot to get her a Mother's Day gift. So up to you. But there for you, please take one just as a little gift to you guys and as appreciation for you. Okay. 2 years ago, I had to preach a sermon on Mother's Day because we were going through the book of Matthew, and it was the passage where Jesus says, "Who is my mother and who is my brother?" And if you know that, it's kind of like, Ryan's laughing. It's not a diss to his family, but it's like, my true mother is the one like who is in the family essentially of faith. And I can remember that service, and someone found out that they're like, wait, as we're going through the book, like it lands on Mother's Day. And we're like, yep, we're going to keep on preaching that. And because it's what we do. So today is kind of the same thing. Like, there's going to be a death of a child. I'm like, this is what I'm preaching on Mother's Day? Yep. So we're gonna work through it. Can I just encourage you one more thing? Melissa and I were talking, and she's like, how much longer are we in 2 Samuel? I said a few more weeks. I don't know if any of you are those people that read a book and then get like 75% through it. And you're like, kind of feels like they're repeating themselves. I've already got all this stuff, and you set it aside and never finish. We can have a tendency to do that. I would encourage you, stay engaged, see the full breadth of the book, what is written, what is meant for our good, for our instruction, even as in some ways it continues to repeat themes that we have looked at, and it's good to be reminded. Peter says at one point, he says in the book of Peter, he goes, I'm going to remind you of something you already know. Something you already know, but it's good to be reminded of it anyways. So, here we are in 18 and 19 today. We have had David the king who has unified Israel, has now been outcast by his own son who has rebelled against him. Absalom, the good-looking son of the king, has taken over. He has stolen the heart of the people. He has stolen the crown. David has now had to flee from Jerusalem. We talked last week about this idea of he is kind of back into the wilderness as he crosses the Jordan River. East of the Jordan is the promised land. West of the Jordan is the promised land. East of the Jordan is the wilderness. And so he is back out into the wilderness. And there is going to now be a showdown between him and those that follow him and those that follow his son Absalom as he rebels. And so in 18:1, I actually have NIV now. Last week that was a wild translation, but we're back to NIV. It says in verse 1, David mustered the men and were with him and appointed them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. David sent out troops, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. The king told the troops, I myself will surely march out with you. Remember the last time David stayed back and he didn't go with the army? Do you remember what happened? Remember? This is the story of Bathsheba, as when kings go out to war and then David stays behind and then has the whole affair that turns into murder and cover up and all sorts of family dysfunction coming out of that. This time he's like, nope, I'm going to go into battle with you. But the men said in verse 3, you must not go out. If we are forced to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city. The king answered, I will do whatever seems best to you. So the king stood beside the gate while all the men marched out in units of hundreds and thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, be gentle with the young man Absalom, for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom of the commanders. They go out, right? They're all in their groups, like you would imagine an army, with different commanders over them. Joab and his brother, and then we also get this Ittai, which is a guy that has followed him from kind of a foreign land. We don't have time to get into all that. But as they go, David is worried about his son, as any parent would be, right? And he's going out into battle. And so he says, please, like, be gentle, like, show mercy to my son. I don't want to see harm come to him, which is just kind of crazy to think about. They're going into battle, like hand to hand, sword to sword, spear to spear. Hey, he's going to be fighting you, but be careful. Like, show him mercy for my sake. And so David's army, verse 6, march out of the city to fight Israel. And the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There Israel's troops were routed by David's men, and the casualties that day were great, 20,000 men. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest swallowed up more men that day than the sword. It's a weird language there, the forest swallowed up more men. So this battle ends up taking place in a forest, and that language actually, if you go back, do you remember when Pharaoh is chasing the Israelites, and it says that God then, when he's into the Red Sea and the water comes, and it actually is the same language, it swallows Pharaoh up. There's another story in the Bible about a rebellion that takes place, Korah rebellion, and people are said to be swallowed up by the earth. And so there's these stories of like kind of divine intervention. And so why it doesn't directly say that, there is something to be said that God is on the side of David. David is outnumbered, his troops are outnumbered, and yet the forest is swallowing them up. And so we don't know what that means. Are they running into trees? Are there ditches? Like, what's happening? And we don't get all of it, other than God is once again orchestrating this to bring David back into being the king, to sit on the throne. But we do hear what happens to one of those individuals. And here's what it says. Verse 9. Now Absalom, happening to meet David's men, was riding his mule. And as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, Absalom's hair got caught in the tree. He was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept on going. This reminds me of the boy, this is so nerdy. This reminds me of the Star Wars scene where they're fighting and they're flying through the woods, if any of you have watched this, and like the guys are like running into like all the trees and the fallen branches. And so you can imagine Absalom is riding and he's not paying attention. And remember what he said? This was like the foreshadowing earlier about how good looking he was and how he had this beautiful hair and how he'd cut it once a year and like weigh it to show like, look, even my hair, like how glorious it is. And so now it's this same idea that like your pride, right? The thing that you prize the most is the thing that ends up leading to your destruction. And so it says as he goes, he catches in an oak tree, and he's left hanging there. And actually, the language there, it's in NIV, it says midair, but it literally, the words is, he is left hanging between heaven and earth. And some people make more of this than others, but it is an interesting idea that some theologians would make. The point that is being made there is that Absalom is not right from an earthly perspective. He is a rebel, he is rebelling, and so the earth is rejecting him as the king. And he is also being rejected by God as the king, and so he's left suspended between heaven and earth. Really interesting to think this through. And so it says that he's left there dangling, hanging. I would never have that problem. There's pluses to being bald. Okay. Verse 10, now one of the men saw what had happened, and he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. Joab said to the man who told him this, what? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt. But the man replied, even if 1,000 shekels were weighed out into my hands, I would not lay a hand on the king's son. right? He knows this is the king's son. He knows what has been said. Joab's like, kill him. Why didn't you kill him? I would have given you this great reward, a warrior's belt. He said, no, it could have been 1,000. I'm not touching him. I would not lay a hand on the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, protect the young man Absalom for my sake. And if I had put my life in jeopardy and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have kept your distance from me. Essentially saying, what he's saying to Joab is, yeah, you want him dead. You say I should have killed him, but then you would have distanced yourself from me because you know what he's done to people that have killed the innocent, even though Absalom is in no way innocent, right? You remember David, when people have brought news of Saul's death, right? When they brought news of Saul's son's death, of what they've done, he killed them both. So he's like, I'm not touching him. So Joab, who is ever the one to take matters into his own hands, right? We've seen this throughout, continues this posture. So Joab said, I'm not waiting, in 14, Joab said, I am not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. If the 3 spears weren't enough. Why that? I think what's happening there is now it's going to be harder for David to know who killed his son, right? Hey, who killed him? Well, one of the 11 of us, right? Like, it's somebody. And so trying to take the blame off, but they kill him. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom, threw him in a big pit in the forest, and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all of Israel fled to their homes. So he doesn't get a burial like one that is respected, to be buried with his fathers in their tombs, right? A lot of times there was, just like actually we have today, right? Some people they buy their lot, like their family plot, and you're buried next to your father and grandfather and whatnot. And so the same thing was done when you think about this, that you were buried in the tombs of your father. This was a sign of respect. This was a sign of dignity. This is even when they take Joseph's bones with them out of Egypt and Jacob, his father, so that they can be buried with their people. And so the fact that now they kind of almost humiliate him in his death, in that, hey, how you're just going to be put in a ditch and we're throwing rocks on top of you. This is not a good burial for him. And then we get one little next part. Look at this. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, I have no son to carry out the memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself and is called Absalom's monument to this day. I think this whole story, when we go, what do we get out of this? We have proverbs that are all throughout that talk about what? Pride goes before the fall, right? That's the old King James kind of version. Or pride, leads to destruction, right? A haughty spirit is looked down on. Like over and over throughout Scripture, we have like God is about humility, not pride. This is then when in Philippians, 2:3, where he says like each of you should look at the interest of others, not like thinking of yourself so highly, but in humility count their desires, them even more important than your own. And so now what we're getting a story that actually plays out the principles that we see all throughout the Old and New Testament, because God isn't changing. And he's saying pride, this arrogance, which is how Absalom is looked at, even so much as he's building a pillar to himself before he's even died. That, hey, I want my name to be remembered, to be honored. I want to leave this legacy. Do you know there's now in Israel, there's a place called Absalom's tomb or pillar, though it is most likely not. It's from like the Roman Greek time period. It's not the original one, but people will go there and like throw rocks at it in remembrance of Absalom because of what he's remembered. He's remembered as a rebel, as one who opposes that of God, and one who is proud and then was brought down because of it. And so when you read those stories, it's easier to read like pride goes before a fall and know exactly what it means. A lot of the Old Testament are these long narratives teaching us the outcome of this way of life. And so the outcome of the way of life of Absalom is one of death, is one of God bringing the proud down low. So Absalom is dead. There is now, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip a little bit, and let me just kind of summarize for you this next little section. There's discussion on who is going to go and tell David what has happened. Ahimaaz is the guy who actually told, if you remember in the story, went and warned David about the plot to begin with. He wants to go and tell David. Joab's like, no, don't go. I'll send somebody else. I'll send this Cushite. I'll send this foreigner. He can go and tell him. Because he's probably, you might die. You don't need to do this. They argue about who's going to tell them. Eventually, both of them go. They're both running to go and tell David what happens, the news of what has happened. And so this is, let's pick back up in 18, verse 30. 18:30. The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then a Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has vindicated you by delivering you from the hand of all who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of the Lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." It's like such a political answer, right? You can't say yes or no. But the king knows what's happening. David knows. And the king was shaken. He went up to his room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." David's heartbroken. We see this time and again, David's attitude, even for those who are pursuing him, who have done him wrong, that there is this trait of mercy, there's this trait of care for them, of not like, David is not a sore winner. You know how some people are like, there's a lot of us are sore losers, but there's some of us that are really bad at winning. We gloat, we celebrate too excessively, we love when we're on top. And David, for all of David's faults, isn't like this. Going back to the days of Saul, that as God disperses justice, he still realizes that this is a death of a human, that there's like worth and dignity there. And then more so, right, this is now his son. And so he's grieving, and it says that essentially he's wailing over his son. 19. Joab was told, "The king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." And for the whole army, the victory that day was turned into mourning. Because on that day, the troops heard it said, "The king is grieving for his son." The men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The men have this great victory. They were outnumbered. They were outarmed. They go into a forest to fight, right? They are essentially the tribe of Judah, David's tribe, fighting against all the rest of Israel. And yet somehow, through the power of God, they prevail. They have a great victory. And yet when they come back, instead of parades, instead of celebration, they hear the king is in turmoil. The king is like up on the roof, wailing and screaming for his son. So it says that they have to like sneak back into the city as men who were like deserters of battle, right? When you deserted a battle, you don't want anybody to know that that was you. And so now they're coming back in as though they had deserted the battle, even though there was a victory. And so it says that Joab hears all about this. And you can imagine Joab, he's going to tell you what he thinks. Verse 4, the king covered his face and cried aloud, "Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab went into the house to the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all of your men who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom was alive today and all of us were dead. Now go and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now." This will be worse than all of the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now. Joab says, you are humiliating those who have sacrificed their lives for you, who were willing to die for you, and you're wailing over your son's death as though you wish we would have been the ones to die. I don't know what do you think about that? Like, in one sense, I'm like, his son died. Let him grieve. And then yet, on the other side, it helps me think when I'm playing between two ideas. The other side is like, he's a king. He's the leader. It's a little bit like you need to suck it up. Sometimes, as someone who leads often, there are times where you emotionally don't want to. When there's things going on in your own life that are pressing and you're like, man, today is the day I don't want to come to church. Or today is the day that I just don't want to, think about maybe moms, dads, I don't want to deal with the kids. Like, I have my own junk going on. Like, I can't deal with this. And then yet there is a call for those of us who have been placed in different levels of authority to push through. And I'm not saying that you do that at the expense of, your mental health or being fake somehow. But there is a sense that when you have been given a responsibility, you have to follow through and do that even during tough times. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's the point of the text. But I just sat there thinking oh, that's so interesting that Joab's you got to be the king. You can't be the dad right now. You have to be the king. And then the language that's used is not actually David as the father, but it's constantly is David the king, the king, the king, the king. And so Joab's for all of Joab's faults, he's you need to be a king right now. Otherwise you will lose all of your men. And this will be worse than everything that has happened before, which I don't even know how that's possible. His life is a mess, but this is going to be worse. And so he takes Joab's advice. So the king got up, verse 8, took his seat in the gateway, and when the men were told the king is sitting in the gateway, they all came before him. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled to their homes. So he kind of takes his spot again amongst the people. It doesn't talk about weeping or wailing anymore. Maybe that's done in private. I don't know. But he takes the role as the king again, his place of authority. So this next part is David returning. Again, remember that David has crossed from the west side of the Jordan, where the promised land was, where he sat as the king, this place of abundance, had to go back into the desert, and now he's going to be brought back in as the king. At the very end of this, you're going to see he has to cross the Jordan again. This Jordan, I'm telling you guys, if you've never thought about this, that water is this pivotal, this illustration in Scripture of choices we make and the outcome of those choices, even so much that I don't think I talked about last week. I'm just going, baptism is the same thing, right? That we are baptized in water, right? And how profound that is, that it's not the washing away of dirt in a physical sense, but this reality of washing away dirt in a very real spiritual sense, that you are going from death to life as you go through the waters. And so David has been through the waters into the desert, not knowing, remember what he said, I don't know if I'll ever come back and see the ark. God's going to determine this. And so now God has, it says, Joab says, you've been vindicated, right? You've been vindicated by God. And now he's going to be brought. And he now comes across several different people that he had interactions with as he had to leave. And he's going to have a choice with how to deal with each one of them. What do I do? How do I return? I'll just read through this section. Throughout the tribes of Israel, all the people were arguing among themselves, saying, the king delivered us from the hand of the enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled the country to escape from Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? The people are talking. He's delivered us. He's the right king. But then we switched to our allegiance. And now that guy's dead. Shouldn't we bring back the true king? Verse 11, King David then sent message to Zadok and Abiathar the priest. Ask the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace, since what is being said throughout Israel has reached the king at his quarters? You are my relatives, my own flesh and blood. So why should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my own flesh and blood? May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you are not the commander of my army for life in the place of Joab. He won over the hearts of the men of Judah so that they were all in one mind. They sent word to the king, return, you and all your men. Then the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. Sorry, I kind of skipped ahead when I was talking earlier. So Israel is talking about bringing him back. He then goes to his own tribe. Why haven't you brought me back? Why haven't you brought me back as king? Everybody is kind of, the rest of them are talking, you're my own flesh and blood. And then he goes and he says, I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to make him the commander of my army. Amasa is another nephew. He is also the general of Absalom's army. Again, it's so weird what David does to me. And I don't know if it's political maneuvers that we're reading about, or it's this way of like godly wisdom of how do I unite a broken country? And so he comes back and he says, I'm going to take the very guy who was the commander of that army, I'll make him a commander for my army. To show like there's no ill will here, that I'm the king of all of us. And so what does it do? It says that he wins the hearts of the people. The same way that Absalom steals him, the hearts. Remember it said that Absalom stole them. David wins them back. This is not unlike what he did earlier. Do you remember when Abner dies, who was the commander of Saul's army, and he mourns for him, and he says, I had nothing to do with that death. I wasn't trying to have him killed. And again, it said that the people, he won over the people. Absalom wins over the people by flattery and by his good looks. David wins over the people by his actions and how he treats them, especially in defeat. It's fascinating. Okay, now let's get to the people that he runs into as he's about to cross. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was. They crossed the fords to take the king's household over and do whatever he wishes. The king's coming back. It would be great if we went to meet him in case there was trouble. Let's go welcome him back. Let's roll out the red carpet. He's coming back. We better get on his good side. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king and said to him, "May my lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. But today I have come here at the first from the tribe of Joseph to come down and meet my lord the king." Do you remember what Shimei did as David is mourning and crying as he has to leave the city from Absalom? He's out there picking up stones, like swearing at him, cursing him. "I hope you die," right? Like, I probably shouldn't elaborate on all the curse words, but just like think of all the good curse words that you could, as he throws them, as he's like, "I'm glad you're leaving," right? Like, God is punishing you. Now he's the first one, comes across the Jordan before the king has come across. And he's like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I did wrong. Can you forgive me?" Think about this for a minute. David is vindicated. Even though the army was bigger on the other side, even though he was out of his city, he was victorious. God has been on his side kind of always, completely. And if this is not the time to like execute some justice, Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, verse 21, said this, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death, for he cursed the Lord's anointed?" And David replied, "What does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah?" This is now a common words that he's using or phrase that talk about these two brothers that are essentially constantly looking to kill people. I mean, that's what they do. "What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't I know that today I'm king over Israel? Like, I've won. I don't need to keep killing. I've won. God has put me back where I belong. I've won." Man, if that is not a word for me of like when you win, when you feel vindicated, think if there's ever turmoil in a job, if there's a relational issue and time passes and eventually like things are brought out into the light and you feel like, yes, I've won. It's shown, right? Is this the time to then be like, "I told you so"? Or is it the time to go like, yeah, God proved what was true, what was right, and I'll just stand on that. So this is what David does. So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die," and the king promised him an oath. I will say in 1 Kings, he tells his son Solomon, "Be careful of this guy," and Solomon ends up killing him, but that's a whole nother story. For other things that he did wrong. Okay, so that's the first guy to come meet him. The second one, Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his mustache or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. He's grimy. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, "Why didn't you go with me?" If actually you remember, Ziba, the servant, had said that he didn't go with them because he was looking to take control again, and he was hoping to be put in power. He said, "My lord, the king, since your servant is lame, He said, "My lord, the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled, and I will ride on it, so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord, the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants," this is Saul's descendants, "deserve nothing but death from my lord the king. But you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make more appeal to the king, to any more appeal to the king?" The king said to him, "Why say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him take everything now that my lord the king has returned home safely." It's a weird little story. Ziba had come as David was fleeing, brought him cakes of raisins, flasks of wine, loaves of bread. And he said, I'm blessing you. Mephibosheth, he doesn't want anything to do with you. He wants to take back some power and control, but I'm still on your side. And so in that point, David said, well, you get everything then. You can take all that is Mephibosheth's, you take it. But now David is presented a choice. He's presented a choice that one guy says one thing and another says the opposite. And what does he do? We don't get in here who is right or who is wrong. It's super fascinating. I say that a lot, but because I really am. That David doesn't have complete clarity. Can I make another sub-point on this? So one, David doesn't take vengeance on someone who's cursed him, throw stones at him as he wins. He also, as he comes in, doesn't now go like, well, I know everything. Because God was on my side, I can know everything. I'm always right. I'm never wrong. Like he comes into this going, I don't know. You each take half. I'm done. Take half. I'm done. I'm not going to like go into this any longer. I tend to think Mephibosheth was telling the truth. One, he's crippled. He couldn't do anything. Two, he even says to the king, like, let him have all of it. I'm just glad you're back. And so I think there's some vindication even there for Mephibosheth in that story. Okay, last guy, and we'll wrap up, is a guy named Barzillai, the Gileadite. Also came down to cross the Jordan with the king and to send him on his way from there. Now, Barzillai was very old, 80 years of age, and he had provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem, and I will provide for you. I'll summarize maybe this next little section. There's an argument. Barzillai says, no, I blessed you. I'm not kind of looking to get anything from this. He goes, I'm super old. He says, I don't hear well. I can't hear the female and the male singers. I can't tell the difference. I can't taste good food from bad food. A lot to look forward to as you get old, I guess. And he goes, just let me go and die kind of in my own hometown. And so instead, David takes one of his servants and is blessing now Barzillai through the servant as he crosses. But here in 39 is kind of the end where we'll stop, in verse 39. So it says, so all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and bid him farewell, and Barzillai returned to his home. Mason and Janae, if you guys want to come up, we'll close here in a second. This passage can leave you going, okay, what do we take from this? And so let me kind of summarize some things for you. One, it's this, again, the story of rebellion and pride consistently throughout Scripture is looked down on. Instead, it's humility and submission that is elevated. We live in a culture that is all about pride. I mean, right? Like making a name for yourself. The more followers you get, the more people that you have, right? The bigger your name is. We live in a culture like that. We also live in a culture that prides itself on individualism, we're a nation that started out of rebels. Do you ever think about this? Our very core of our nation is that of rebellion. And so we hold that as like as a good thing, right? And there's some ways it is, right? Like the underdog fighting against the man. But you ever think of like you have been so ingrained in that when you read scriptures that talk about submitting to one another, we like, I don't know about that one, right? Like we want to be powerful and in control. I want to have the autonomy to choose. I don't want someone to tell me what to do. And so we live in a culture that is saying pride is good, like be confident. That's a good thing. And again, there is some truth in that. But maybe my pastoral thought for you is, we should read Absalom as a story that should, cause us to relook at passages like pride goes before a fall. Passages like in humility consider others more important than you. because we have a culture that pushes us to the extreme the other way. So that's one. And then secondly, this thought of when God does vindicate us in a situation, when God does prove that, man, what we were doing was honorable or noble or right, when a relationship, when you made the right choice and it finally is shown in the light, my encouragement, be careful. Be grateful to God, like as David is. He's like, I'm back as king. I already know that I'm king. We don't have to continually push that in people's faces. We don't need, when we were right, we don't need to constantly remind them, yeah, remember that situation? I was right. You were wrong. And I know I don't know about you. I have the tendency for sure to do that. To be able to go yeah, let me just live in my victory. Love it. But I think what I see David doing constantly is giving praise to God, because it's really God who's victorious in all of this. It's his will. And then this humility actually even in victory. So with that, we only have a couple more weeks of 2 Samuel, but would you rise as we close in song this morning?
Worthy is your name, Jesus. exalted now in the heavens as your glory fills this place. You alone deserve our praise. You're the name above all names.
So as we close, think about this. Absalom, the rebellious, unfaithful son, dies on a tree and is looked at as cursed because of it. Because of his rebellious, because of his pride, because of his sin. Jesus then comes, who is the faithful son, who again dies on a tree and is considered cursed, but it's not for his own actions, it's for us. And so why we deserve the outcome of Absalom, we get the outcome of new life, a gift of mercy and grace, because the faithful Son of God dies on our place on that tree. Isn't that, it's amazing. And to think through that. And so as you go out today, like live in that you don't get that. That sometimes we look at that punishment in the Old Testament and we go like, oh, how can, he be dying like that or any of this? But this is what all of us deserve, right? This is where we're at. Sin brings death. We all sin, and so we all should be dying and be punished because of that. But we believe the reason we gathered is because there is the Son who was faithful, who died in our stead, who was crucified on that cross, and now we have new life. Let's pray. Dear God, man, thank you for the way that you show yourself through Scripture. I pray that we would take that to heart, that we would be encouraged by that we would be challenged by that. God, I pray for your Spirit that is active and working and alive in those right here in this room. Would you constantly be calling us into deeper commitment to you, into following you, into, laying down our lives for the sake of the one who has laid down his life for us. God, would you empower us to be able to live that life? It's not possible without you. You are so good. We thank you also for our moms. We thank you for the blessing that they are in our lives, for the way that you have uniquely made male and female, and how you give the gift of motherhood. And so thank you for the ways that women have blessed me. My mom has blessed me. Those that have played that figure in my life, would we honor them today just as you would have us. And so we pray this in your Son's name. Amen. All right, guys, have a great Mother's Day. See you next week. Don't forget your plants.